Good morning. Welcome to the webinar on the transatlantic relationship and the 2020 U.S. presidential election. The debate is organized by the diplomatic representation of Flanders to the USA. My name is Yves Wantens, and I'm representing Flanders in the USA on a diplomatic level, and it's my privilege to introduce this webinar and its speakers to you. I would also like to acknowledge the attendance of the newly accredited Belgian ambassador to the USA, Mr. Jean-Arthur Regibaud. The relations between the US and Europe are at a crucial juncture. The upcoming elections and its outcome will play a major role in determining the direction of this relationship. Will it be affirmed and strengthened? Will it deal in tune with new challenges, or will the relationship struggle? Prosperity, security, and the well-being of the North Americans and Europeans alike depend on this relationship. The importance of trade and job creation between these two players is big, very big. We brought together two distinguished diplomats, Ambassadors Korologos and Ambassador Gutman. Both of them have served as ambassadors of the USA to Belgium. And I'm sure that all of you have read their CVs, but I just want to point out a few things. Ambassador Tom Korologos served in Belgium from July 2004 till February 2007, and was previously based in Baghdad in 2003, together with Paul Bremer, who was the administrator of the Coalition Provisional Authority. Prior to Iraq, he served as the chairman of the Executive Committee and was co-founder of Timmins & Company, a Washington consulting firm. I would also like to point out that Ambassador Korologos has served for 5 US presidents. Our other guest is Ambassador Howard Gutman, who served as ambassador to Belgium from August 2009 till July 2013. He had a long career with the Washington law firm, Williams & Connolly, but also worked for the FBI, Supreme Court, and the Court of Appeals of the Fifth Circuit. He served as advisor for a number of Democratic candidates and currently leads the Gutman Group, a diversified global consulting, investment, and transactional practice. And if you have the time on a Saturday morning, you can tune into his talk show, as I see it, as it's called, on radio.com WRVA. Our moderator today is Greet De Keyser. She's the Senior U.S. Correspondent for over 20 years for VTM, the commercial broadcaster in Flanders, and she's also the correspondent for a Flemish newspaper, Het Laatste Nieuws, HLN and HLN Online, and has her own video vlog. Greet has been reporting for a number of places, from a number of places across the world, including South Africa and Iraq. I hope you will all enjoy the debate. I'm looking forward to it. And now, Greet, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon to the 3 ambassadors, the 2 that will take part in this debate. Good afternoon, Mr. Gutman and Mr. Korologos. Well, let us start with the elections because everybody wants to know. We are 13 days now before election day. I have been here for 20 years. I have been here through 6 election cycles, but a bizarre one as this, never before. How are you guys looking back on this strange election year? And I want to give the floor first to Ambassador Korologos. Let's do age before beauty, and then afterwards we go to Mr. Gutman. Mr. Korologos.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the chance to renew my friendships in Flanders, Antwerp, all of Belgium. This is a great opportunity for me to return to a lot of fond memories during my tour in Belgium. As Greet mentioned, I've been poking around politics for 50 years in the US, and this is the weirdest one yet. I've been involved in every 2 years, and it's not over. 14 days to go, and Lord knows what's going to happen between now and election day 14 days from now. There was a headline in the paper the other day that said, everyone in Washington has gone crazy. We have an election season. 23 million people have already voted. 52% of the electorate has voted. 10 times as many has voted this year as in 2016. And the other interesting point that I'd like to make is that Democrats have outvoted the Republicans by a 2-to-1 margin so far this year. But the Republicans tend to vote on election day. So it tends to balance out. Democrats vote early, Republicans vote late. And I guess where I'm going is we're liable to be Christmas Eve before we know who wins the election.
Yeah,
And,
I will come back to that later in this hour. But Mr. Gutman, has it been that strange to you too, and why?
Well, thank you so much, Greet and Yves and Nicholas, for all your help and your hospitality. I love getting a chance to speak and see Belgians, and a particular shout out to Ambassador Regibo. Back when I was new in Belgium, we worked a great deal together, and so welcome. And someone please check my flat in the Sablon, because I was spending a week, a month in Belgium. I left on March 10th, kind of shut the door, not expecting I wouldn't get back for who knows how long, but it may be a year, which is emblematic of a very strange time in our history, a very strange election for two reasons. One, it isn't disrespectful at all to say that the Trump presidency has been rather unique. I don't think we've ever had a candidate running for re-election with an all-out war on the media, who has said he doesn't know if he can trust the ballot, who doesn't know if he can trust the results. We've never seen a debate, I would say, like the last one, where all I could tell is chaos. Normally, you're supposed to look presidential. That's gone out the window. Combine that chaos with the chaos of COVID, where the suggestion for the last debate got canceled because the debate society required that it be virtual. And then the person who had COVID said, I'm not going to be virtual. I want to be kissing my opposition. So there is chaos. And it's not just for what's come to date. I expect that chaos could continue. It leaves America looking bad. My Belgian friends laugh at us and say, how could you? The only hope I have for the future is that when I got to Belgium after the Bush administration, weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist and the like, if you'll remember, Belgium had indicted Donald Rumsfeld. They had banned our planes from Belgian airspace. So we've been in this situation before, and we've repaired it in the past. We'll repair it again.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, you know, what I can say is that at the moment, all the voting places, voting stations, poll stations that are open, there is no chaos. So that's a good sign to me that at least with early voting, it seems to run quite smoothly. But a lot of people want to get their vote cast. That is true. With, you know, we had 136 million votes cast in 2016. It will be more, and probably more than 60% of Americans will go to vote. An incredible historical record would that be. But, you know, for the moment, the candidate of the Democratic Party, former VP, former Vice President Joe Biden, is ahead in all the polls, most of the polls against Trump. So I base myself on Real Clear Politics because they take all the polls together and draw their number from there. You know, the Biden is now 8.4, 8.6% ahead of Trump, but that's a percentage point lower than 2 weeks ago. So Ambassador Korologos, Do you think that Trump can still bridge this gap with, with his mass rallies going on, his racing through the country? Do you think he can still bridge that gap?
Well, if the past is prologue, I take you back to 2016 when he was 5 or 6 points behind. I have a theory that there is a whole group of American voters who do not want to say they voted for Trump. And they don't want to say who they voted for anybody. So what you have is a fuzz factor. How many people didn't say they voted last time for Hillary Clinton? And Trump beat her very handily in the Electoral College. So it remains to be seen. Yes, the president is running helter-skelter around the country. He must know something. He is very active, going to the battleground states. Senator Biden has gone a little quiet during the last week or 10 days of the election. When you're a front runner like that, you generally go silent. You don't want to do anything to foul up the victory. That is obviously in their horizon. But it's not what a famous baseball player once said, it's not over till it's over.
Oh yeah, and you know what, and that's what the Biden campaign is telling their voters, the Democrats, like, don't stay home, go vote. It's not over until it's over. November 3rd is the day that will count. Ambassador Gutman, do you think that Biden, because he is absent from the race for the moment, he's preparing for the debate, but in that way, he, the image that he has of being a little weak, tired, old, can that be a negative element for him just to stay ahead of President Trump?
So a couple of things. First of all, I completely agree with Tom. This race is not over by a long shot. It's not a question of whether Trump can catch up. I don't know that he's behind. I think those polls are largely worthless because never before in our history have we had people who so dislike a person that they may still vote for. They will never tell their sons, their daughters, because they don't want their children to be ashamed that they voted for Trump. They won't tell their neighbors, but they will go in that voting booth and pull the Trump lever and then come out and say they voted for Biden. So the polls are largely worthless. Second, they will always tighten towards the end. That last weekend, they'll say, oh, there's amazing movement. What did Trump do? Trump did nothing. It is just that people now are beginning to answer the question they've known all along who they vote for. You can drive in Pennsylvania. Anyone thinking Biden's in the lead in Pennsylvania hasn't driven through Pennsylvania. You can see lawn signs as far as you drive in Pennsylvania, they're all Trump. So now the Democrats need turnout from the inner cities, from Philadelphia, from Pittsburgh, and Obama is going there now to try to get that turnout. So it's a long way to go. As to what Joe Biden should be able to do, Joe Biden should stay home. This election, first of all, is not about Joe Biden. It is just, it's about Donald Trump or not. And the problem was people disliked Hillary Clinton. They disliked her with a passion. So even though they could say, I will never vote for Donald Trump, they were able to give their vote to a third party because they wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton either. And that is what gave Trump the election. 7% of that vote went to third parties. What you just want is them to say, that guy Biden, he's not great, but okay, he's better than the alternative.
Yeah, so there is, and I totally agree. You know what? Most people don't dislike Biden. They may doubt his abilities maybe a little bit, and you know what? He's 77. So, but now it's different from 2016, Ambassador Korologos, because now President Trump, he used to be new. He was the new guy on the political scene. You know, now he has to defend the 4 years that we went through with him. What kind of influence will that have?
Howard is accurate in his analysis of the arch enemy last time was Hillary Clinton. It was easy to say they were voting against Hillary. A lot of people vote against somebody. My experience with candidates in elections is they don't like to vote for anybody. They vote against the last guy. So you get a lot of that involved. This is not 2016. This is 2021 or 2020 or whatever year it is. And
I'm afraid it's still 2020.
but I'm afraid, let me repeat, it's liable to be a long time before we know who wins.
Yeah, definitely. But Ambassador Gutman, what do you think? You know what, the economy used to be the biggest point of the re-election campaign for President Trump. Is it still, and is that a bad thing for Biden?
So the economy is sometimes a buzzword. The economy, what that usually means is how much money do I have? And so people say, oh, I just want a good economy. What they actually want is they want to be making money. That's what the tax cuts are about. The tax cuts go to the voters. It helps the large percentage. It hurts the large percentage of non-voters. So the poor votes much less. You're talking about, we might get 60% turnout. Can you imagine a Belgian election with 60% turnout? You get 95% turnout.
Yeah, well, the difference is in Belgium, it's mandatory. And here you can choose to go to vote.
There's a lot more differences. Here, our poorest, our English as a second language, our recently arrived population, our poorest, they can't take the time. They don't have the car. They don't have the bus to go vote. And they're the people hurt by the tax cuts and the like. The people helped are the people who vote. And so, yes, it is likely that the economy will be the biggest issue. And that's why Trump, who is not liked for his morality, he's not liked for his presence, he's not liked by his, but he's liked because he puts money in the pocket of people who vote.
Yeah. So I want to go to the support for Biden, but the support from Republicans, Mr. Korologos, have you ever seen that happen? Like, you know, they call themselves the 43 Republicans, you know, referring to President George W. Bush. George W. Bush said he was going to vote for Biden. You know, the widow of John McCain is going to vote for Biden. The former president of the Republican Party, Steele, is going to vote for Biden. There are many more, you know, the Lincoln Project, all Republican strategists, they are campaigning against President Trump. Is that a first in, you know, all the history of the Republican campaigning years?
I don't think it's a first, because I remember when 2016, I went to my party caucus, and there were never Trumper signs at the Republican caucus in 2016 in downtown Washington. So there was some animosity against President Trump from the beginning. And there are always some naysayers that decide to not vote. We've had in the last little while on television here a whole series of books written. You get Bob Woodward, you get John Bolton, you get other authors have written books laying bare certain meetings with the president and certain comments that he has made. But in the end, those people in between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and the southern part of Idaho and Utah, they sure like him. And so it's going to be hard to predict who's going to actually win this thing, and that's we won't know till it's over.
It is, but you know, even senators want to get out of the shadow of President Trump for the moment. I've never seen that happening in that big amount, and that obviously I didn't see that in 2016. You're right. In 2016, there were never Trumpers. But Ambassador Gutman, have you seen this happening before? And what is the dynamics behind it?
Of course, there's always some, but in fairness, it's never been at this level. The Lincoln Republicans, having George Conway, the husband of Kellyanne Conway, who is conservative a Republican is my friend Tom, say, I just can't take the embarrassment anymore of this man in office. And what it is every day, whether it's Twitter, whether it's how you handle international relations, whether it's how you handle women, whether it's refusing to renounce extremist groups, whether it's saying things like there were good people on both sides in Charlottesville. There are good people on the Republican side, as many as on the Democrat side, and it's hard. Doesn't make you a bad person if you vote for Trump. It's just hard to take your morality and your ethics and your love of people and translate it into someone who most people think are vulgar, most people think is crass, most people think has really hurt international relations. Other people say, well, that just makes them honest and open in a world where everybody's been too politically correct. But for those people who say, I'm a proud Republican, I'm embarrassed to have Donald Trump, I've never seen the percentages as there is now. On the other hand, the reason it's close, he's brought a lot of people who say, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I don't vote. I'm for guns and God and my own stuff, and politicians, I have nothing to do with Mitt Romney. They like Donald Trump.
Yeah, and there's still 5%, only 5%, but undecided voters. So it's a very hard race just to get them on your side. But if you look at both candidates right now, people, some people want 4 more years of what we had. Other people want change. But if you look at both candidates, they're both old white men. Trump is 74, Biden is 77. Are they still relative to the voters right now, Mr. Korologos?
Well, Biden brings a great deal of experience to the campaign. He was in the Senate for 40 years, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, vice president for 8 years. He has a great deal of Washington experience. During the Obama years, he was the chief negotiator for all the legislation that President Obama sent forward. So he has the Washington wherewithal, the Washington experience. So that's a big plus for Vice President Biden. President Trump, as Howard has mentioned, and as we all know, has governed by tweet, has governed by chaos and dysfunction, and somehow it worked. He got a big tax bill through. He opened some channels. We had just the other day, peace broke out in the Middle East. My goodness, Bahrain, and they had a meeting on the balcony there. How Bahrain and who else was it joined?
UAE.
The UAE, yeah.
UAE joined in a big extravaganza, and more to come, says Trump. And the other thing that I think is interesting, President Trump has been going around saying, please like me. That's one of his campaign slogans, please like me. And the other thing he said, interesting the other day, is if he loses a state, by golly, he's not going to go visit that state again. He'll show him. So this is Trump. And somehow it resonates with a lot of the voters.
Yeah, he's strong in having grudges against people that are not with him. But Ambassador Gutman, if you look at younger people, isn't this a problem that we still, are having the choice out of 2 old white men?
So Belgians should understand this better than anyone. I believe there are probably people who would inspire more excitement and more confidence. And Nikki Haley and Marco Rubio in the Republican Party, Amy Klobuchar or Kamala Harris or Cory Booker, younger, dynamic with more energy and the like. But sometimes It's just the time for the person at that time. There was never a question in my mind that it was Joe Biden. As you know, I reserved the domain name Biden, www.biden-harris.com and Biden-harris2020.com. I reserved that 3 years ago in 2017.
So you must be a rich man right now.
No, I contributed to the campaign, but I knew that that was the ticket. Why? It was their time to come, not because anyone thinks Joe is the most energetic or the best ideas. By the way, it shouldn't be a secret. You don't particularly want a president who thinks he knows any of the answers. It's not the president who sits there and decides, this is the tax policy, he just puts together the best team. He knows the people who believe in the same ideas, except for Donald Trump. That's what made Ronald Reagan so good. Donald Trump says, can't trust anyone. I'll bring a chief of staff I've never met. John Kelly leaves voting for Biden as his chief of staff and says, you're all fired. I'm going to do it my way. It's never been done that way before. So Joe Biden, you don't have to worry. Is Joe still 100% of his game, or did he lose in an American baseball analogy? Is his fastball 10% slower? Because he's got the team around him. He knows his values. He knows where he needs to go. We've seen Joe for a long time.
Yeah. So let's go to another subject, to the elephant in the room. What do you think about both candidates' plan to handle the corona crisis? I have to say, when President Trump was sick, when I saw him returning to the White House, I couldn't believe my ears when he was saying, like, corona crisis, it's not a problem. Don't let it influence your life. Well, Ambassador Korologos, you're a lifelong Republican. Please give me your answer to my question. What did you think?
Well, what I think is I'm reading Bob Woodward's book called Rage, in which the first few pages, he points out that what President Trump tried to do is not panic the country into some chaotic condition, shutting down the government, shutting down the business community, shutting down everything. So he took a gamble and decided that we will not go that route. He wanted to show confidence that this thing was going to be solved. And it turned out to be much worse than we all thought. There have been predictions of pandemics that have been going on for centuries, and why should this one be any different than the others? And the others have lasted 30 months, 36 months. And so let's see how long this one takes. Now they're predicting maybe opening next May or June, which would put us into another year.
Yeah, or even later. That is true. But you know what? I know a lot of Americans, if I tell them that, you know, Belgium is well, back into a semi-lockdown, a lot of Americans tell me, like, oh, we're so happy that's not going to happen here. But Ambassador Gutman, there is a difference between not going back to a lockdown and telling people not to wear masks, or that wearing masks is not going to be that important.
The response to the coronavirus in the U.S. has been a massive failure of both the Democrat and Republican parties, of the media, and of our society generally. A virus, a pandemic, is not a political issue. It's a medical issue. This wasn't hard for Belgium. You didn't get Bart de Wever and Ilio Di Rupo clashing, or Paul Magnette and Bart de Wever clashing right and left about public health. It's just not that hard to get it right. There was a false dichotomy set up. It's either choose the economy or choose public health. The rest of the world figured out taking reasonable public health measures, shutting down when it's bad enough to get your hospital equipment up, requiring social distancing, masks, reasonable curfews. You can get your economy up and you can control your health. Immediately, COVID became a referendum about Donald Trump. And who made it so? First, Donald Trump. He wasn't announcing, here's how we're going to tackle it. He said, we've done the best job in the world. So then the Democrats had to say, we've done the worst job in the world. And CNN comes on every time and converts a medical crisis into a political gamesmanship. And who's paid the price? Our economy and our public health.
Yeah.
If Anthony Fauci were just told, this kills Republicans and Democrats, Tom and I are both at risk. Let's get some smart medical people in. And if we control the virus, we'll all reasonably be able to open our economy. It would have gotten done.
Yeah.
But instead, they made a hallmark. Are you a tough guy Republican or a sissy Democrat?
Yeah.
It was a failure of our system.
Is candidate Biden, suppose he's getting into the White House after November 3rd, well, after January 20th, of course, but suppose he is elected, is he going to handle it completely different than Trump? Is he going to mandate masks? Is he going to go to a shutdown of the country? I didn't hear that from him as clear as I wanted to hear it.
Are you asking me or Tom?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm asking you, Mr. Gutman, yes.
So I believe that it will look a lot like the rest of the world. If right now Chinese movie theaters are open, China right now is outgrossing America in net revenue in movie theaters. First time in history. Why?
But is Biden clear enough in what he says right now?
Sure, because it's not a political issue. So what he will do is get the virus under control. That he's got Ron Klain, who was in charge of the Ebola virus. We'll get it under control by doing our best with Republican governors. It could be a problem. Doing our best to get the country to where the virus rate is 3 in 100,000, 4 in 100,000, and then open up safely with mask and distance mandates and limits like they did in the rest of the world, from New Zealand to China to Belgium. When it gets bad, you get tougher. When it's open, you do the best you can. But the rest of the world found a way to keep their economies going and their safety of their population.
Can I ask the same question to you, Mr. Korologos? Because do you hear Biden clearly saying that?
Well, in the first place, presidents and the new elections almost always bring the opposite of what the last man or woman was. What is more different than Obama and Bush and Reagan and Carter, and how far back do you want to go? What is more different than Biden versus Trump? So the electorate once in a while rises up and says, I've had enough of this, we'll try something else. So that's one of the things that you can see happening here.
Yeah.
And
So
that's what campaigns are about.
Corona is going to be a major player in this election. That's what you feel?
Yes, Corona is going to be a major issue, and how it's handled is going to be a factor in 2 weeks when people start going to the vote.
Well, before we go to the international implications and the implications for Europe about what president is going to end up in the White House, I just want to touch on one very important subject, and that is, President Trump's warnings about fraud with mail-in ballots, about fraud during the elections, about not leaving the White House when he's gonna lose. How right is he to warn the Americans for fraud during the elections? Mr. Gutman.
So the whole world, including Belgium, should hope and pray that Biden wins Florida. And the reason is, if Biden wins Florida, and the reason it's Florida is they count the mail ballots in advance. So they will be able to announce their results probably the night of the election. And if a lot of states will not start counting those mail ballots until the day of the election. So the Democrat votes won't get counted for a week or two. The Republican votes, as Tom has said, Republicans will vote far more percentage-wise the day of the election. Those will be in that day. So we'll have states where Trump is leading by 5 at the end of the night, but they can tell from the mail ballot, they could declare it for Biden right there because they know he'll pick up 10 points on the mail ballot. But Trump will claim the election's being stolen from him. After the election, he was up by 5 and all of a sudden he's down by 5. He'll claim that's fraud. That will create chaos. if Florida goes that very day for Biden, the Republican Party will realize Trump is not going to win, and they won't let the chaos get out of hand. But if Trump's won Florida, then all those other states really matter. We're going to have what Tom says, we might not know till Christmas, there will be chaos. That should collapse our stock market and Belgium and the world stock market. So 2 months of chaos in America will create chaos around the world. And so it all turns on whether Biden can win Florida, which will have counted the votes in advance that day, and limit the chaos.
Yeah, Mr. Korologos, is there any indication in the history of mail-in voting, because it's not new, it exists for a while already in the US. Is there any indication in the history for President Trump to warn against fraud?
Well, I send you back to President Nixon's election in 1960 when Chicago started coming in with a certain number of votes that put Kennedy over the top. With each hour passing, Kennedy kept gaining. There's fraud and abuse goes on with every election, I suppose. But I have more confidence in the system than that. Yes, I think Trump is a lot of rhetoric that he won't leave the White House if he doesn't win. I think that's a lot of hooey. I think in the end, the United States is not in decline. I mean, we still lead the world in high tech. We lead the world in fracking. We lead the world in medicine. I'm an optimist. I think whether it's Biden or Trump, I think the country will prevail, and I think the system will function. Yeah, we might have 2 new states. If the Democrats win, they might put Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia in as states. Yes, they may stack the Supreme Court. Senator Biden has not told us yet what he's going to do, and he sort of said, I'll let you know before the election. The mask wars will continue. Who knows what to wear to what baseball game and not to what other baseball game. Despite all this, the United States is not in decline, and I'm an optimist.
Okay, so but you said, like, hopefully we know before Christmas who the next president is going to be. That's your estimate of the timeline? It's going to be Christmas?
Well, you get Pennsylvania, they now have allowed 7 extra days to count votes after the election day. You take Wisconsin, the same thing. They're letting it have, and how many, as somebody said in one of the debates the other day, how many trucks are they going to find in the river and Lake Michigan with ballots? We've had that before, and there's the mind of man will not cease when it comes to harvesting votes. But in the end, I think our system will work.
Yeah, but Ambassador Gutman, is that Christmas? Is that your estimate as well? We know that both candidates have already tons of lawyers lined up just to check on every state, everywhere where there might be a problem. And you know it. Are we going to go through, you worked at the Supreme Court, are we going to go through a scenario as in 2000, where it was finally the Supreme Court that stopped the recounts in Florida and decided the election was going to go to President George W. Bush?
That's why I said Florida matters so much. If Biden wins Florida, we'll know it that day who the winner of Florida is, because the mail ballots will have been counted already, and then the current votes can be counted. If Biden wins Florida, I think most people can do the math and know Biden's won the election. So the Republicans know eventually Donald Trump will be gone and they will not have to march heavily in line. But if Trump wins Florida, I believe Tom could be right. There can be several chaoses. It can take a long time to count the ballots because so much will be mail because of COVID. I voted 3 weeks ago. I'm not going to stand and I've never voted mail before. but I shop 3 in the morning when the store is empty because I don't go in crowds anymore.
Yeah.
And so there'll be a lot of the mail vote. That's all Democrat because the Democrats are more worried about COVID. And so that will create a chaos. And there are lawyers everywhere, and that chaos could really take to the Supreme Court. And then we'll see. But I'm hoping if Biden has a big enough lead that he can win the states that will tell that day, like Florida, then that will avoid it.
Yeah, so Ohio is not that important to you.
Well, Ohio's important, Pennsylvania's important, but the point is, if Florida has Biden up winning by 4, then you'll know he's likely won. There's not, the math doesn't work for Trump. So yes, it'll take time to count Pennsylvania, yes, but the math won't be there.
Yeah.
If Trump's won Florida, then the Republicans have something to fight for. Every vote's going to be challenged.
Yeah, let's go to Europe right now. So Ambassador Korologos, if Trump is going to win, is Europe going to end up in a real trade war with the US?
Well, he's already dropped in. NATO has outlived its usefulness. He's already after the NATO countries to start paying their fair share of their allotment. I don't know how much of that is campaign fodder, but in the end, I don't see what you see is what you get. He's not going to change. The bad news is that he has no election to follow up after this one. He doesn't have to run again. The corollary to that is Senator Biden. He's 70s. How old is Biden? 74, 75. He's not going to run again. So he has got freedom to act without fear of another election.
So he might be more extreme versus Europe.
Pardon me?
That President Trump in the second term might be more extreme. Now he is only threatening with more tariffs and you know, it's America first. So everybody that wants to import their products into the country here is going to pay for it.
Well, that's the Trump policy, and once in a while the voters have their say, and
that's what Americans want. Well, Ambassador Gutman, if Biden gets into the White House, he will be more. He's not the isolationist that President Trump is, but you know what? He's going to protect America also against European products. So, you know, businesses are not out of the problems in Europe, just getting their products in.
No, I think we've already seen what a Biden presidency would look like, and we saw it in the Obama presidency. I would be surprised if Tony Blinken, who was Deputy Secretary of State, wasn't Secretary of State. And yes, trade has taken a hit everywhere because of the emergence of the left and the right, the populist movement in every country, but it's a smart trade. I suspect we will see a TTIP. I suspect a trade agreement. Yep. Remember, when I got to Belgium after Bush with the weapons of mass destruction, where Donald Rumsfeld had been indicted and our planes had been banned, the favorability, unfavorability to American leadership in Belgium in 2009 was 8% favorable and 64% unfavorable. Paul Magnette would not talk to me. Ambassador Reginald was not happy with me. He was at the foreign ministry. We weren't the favorite people, but under Obama, we fixed that quickly. And I think that's what you'll see in a Biden presidency. You will see the restoration. Europe has given up on Trump. Angela Merkel doesn't call him. Alexander the Crew, I'm sure, did not expect a call and did not get one, I suspect. But I'd tell Joe Biden to call Alexander the Crew and say hello. Yeah. So there you go.
But in what way could Belgium benefit from a Biden presidency?
I believe trade will be back on in much, much more. And also the sanctions. So I advise lots of Belgian companies, whether it's, you know, Barco or Umicore, any of the manufacturing companies, they can't go near China now. They go near China now, they risk the American sanctions. there'll be a lot more productive dialogue. And so the Belgian companies will have a little tension removed, and the American markets, I suspect, will be available. No one's going to let anybody profit at the cost of their country. But in a fair trade deal, and that's just the definition, what is a fair trade deal? Joe Biden doesn't believe in raising the borders. He's going to have to talk about American jobs, just like Alexander the Crew has to talk about jobs all over Belgium. But we know how to get to win-wins better, I think, under Joe Biden, under Tony Blinken, under whether it's Susan Rice or Tony Blinken. We're used to it.
Yeah, so trade deficits with the US will not be the major thing anymore under Trump, Mr. Korologos. Trade deficit is one of the major things. The White House is just adding up everything that is imported in here and just compares it to what can we send to your country. So that's basically gonna stay the same if Trump stays in the White House.
Don't forget something else. Presidents bring into the job what they were before. Biden was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, was vice president of the United States. Those are not bad experiences for which he brings into the presidency. So he knows trade. He knows the EU. He knows what countries belong to NATO. So he is not a stranger to Europe and to that whole piece of the world. So Biden brings in a great deal of experience, what Trump brought in practically zero experience. He was a developer. What did developers do? They go build golf courses and build big buildings. So I think that what you're going to see is a more calm, a more regular order foreign policy. You'll see more cooperation with the Congress on issues, on budgets. You will see.
Trump still in the White House?
Pardon me?
Even with President Trump still in the White House?
With President Trump in the White House, we're going to see more of the same.
Okay.
He's not going to stop tweeting, and he's not going to stop his blunderbuss policy. And as we've read in all the books, it's not going to change.
Yeah. So, Ambassador Gutman, with Biden in the White House, it looks like he's going to talk with the European Union a lot more. But you know how the European Union works. Is the European Union ready to do that? Because they will have to bring in something as well. They cannot only ask the US, they will have to bring in something as a unity.
So I work every day with European companies, whether it's offshore wind, whether it's dredging, whether it's manufacturing, and I work with American companies as well. And nobody's looking for a handout. But if they've got a better science, if they've got a better product, if they've got a better idea, they're looking to penetrate the U.S. market. And if you're an American, penetrate the European market. I would hope that the European regulators would ease up a little bit with their antitrust on our technology, but I would have hoped the American regulators would have as well. I personally think companies like Google and Apple and Facebook and the like are rather vital to my daily life, and I haven't paid a penny to any of, well, to Apple I do, but Google and Facebook I've never paid a penny to. And yet you get that hostility because somehow they're viewed as anti-European. I don't buy that for a minute. But similarly, the clients I represent in the U.S., if they are the best at what they do, the American market's important, and we need them. And I think the other thing is that question about how many phone calls do you have to make when you call Europe? Who do you call and answer the phone? I really do think the EU functions. I think it functions well. When my friend Herman Van Rompuy was the head there, Bill Kennard would speak to Van Rompuy, and our Secretary of State would speak to Van Rompuy, and they could answer. We got through the 2008 financial crisis together. Europe is Europe, America is America, with the Obama folks working with the European folks. We lifted the world together. That's easily accomplishable once again. And hopefully in 2 weeks, or once the chaos dies down, it will be accomplishable again.
Yeah.
And
Ambassador
don't forget
Korologos,
something else.
you know what we see President Trump constantly, if he gives bad examples, it's very often about the European Union.
That's for sure. Don't forget something else. The first thing either one of them has to solve right soon is the COVID crisis. They're not allowing Americans to travel. The whole travel issue, the whole you can't even like you just said earlier, bars are closing at 8 o'clock. That is not America and the world were built on capacity, full capacity, full stadia, full bars, full restaurants, full movie theaters, not 6 feet apart, not 4 tables out of 12 in a restaurant. So they have to solve the economy first. There are a hell of a lot of unemployed out there that are looking to come back to work, and that has to be solved very soon, right off the bat, no matter who's president.
Yeah.
Let me say,
But-
Greet,
yes.
let me say on that one, the good news for the United States and the rest of the world is it looks like the solution to the COVID crisis is in the hands of Belgians. Because as far as I can see, it's a race between Pfizer for a vaccine. Where is Pfizer developing their vaccine? In Belgium.
And Johnson and Johnson.
And a company that thinks it's called Johnson & Johnson, but we know it's really Janssen Pharmaceuticals. It's really just Paul and Dory Janssen's legacy. And so they're competing against the Pfizer Belgium. So when we all get out of our houses, it will be because some Belgian got the vaccine right. And hopefully that will be sooner rather than later. And we can all go forward and get out of our homes because of either Janssen Pharmaceuticals named Johnson & Johnson because Americans take credit, or Pfizer with Belgians and Americans taking credit will have gotten us out of here.
Well, that's a nice note. So we are guaranteed a better standing as Belgians in the US than we had before. But you know what, we're ending, we're going to the end of our discussion here. And what a lot of people in Europe want to know is, suppose the elections end here in, you know, in a lot of problems. There is violence on the street, there is insecurity. What might be the consequences for Europe? Mr. Korologos.
Well, in the first place, there already is planning for if Trump wins, there are groups planning the police operations, and a lot of major U.S. cities are ready to take action over the victory of Trump. It is not going to go over. You saw what happened in Portland and Seattle. I'm afraid we could be in for some more violence, and that has to be stopped. We can't have that. In the end, elections are actually the voters have decided.
Yeah, but what you know, there will be consequences on the economy as well. And so, and those consequences will not be limited to the US. So how bad will that be for the EU and for Belgium?
Well, if Biden wins, as I said earlier, Biden has an experience and he knows how to handle trade. He knows how to have, he don't sit on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee all those years without learning something. And he's Vice President of the United States has all that inside information for 8 solid years. So Biden will bring in a great deal more experience than Trump did.
Yeah. Ambassador Gutman, what might be well, to you, what might be the immediate consequences for Europe and for Belgium if this is not going to end peacefully?
So I think there's 2 timeframes to think about. First of all, immediately, if either Biden wins quickly or Trump wins quickly, the markets will rally because of certainty. Certainty is helpful to the markets regardless. If in fact we get thrown into, it's going to be weeks and it's going to be chaos, the market will plummet and the Europeans will plummet as well because the American market doesn't plummet on its own. Having said that, in any event, I believe, don't take my financial advice, but in 2021, the markets have to go down because I still can't understand how we've lost a quarter of our economy to COVID. restaurants and movie theaters and retail and to COVID, and the market's at an all-time high. Well, I do know how. We've been artificially inflating it with stimulus,
Yes.
but that's to get through an election and to get elected. When everybody's done their manipulations to get elected, and then you look at the real economy, it's not a 28,000 Dow, it's going to go back to 22, 21, and with it, the Europeans as well.
Yeah, so continuously printing money has an end as well. So, you know what, to end this conversation, Ambassador Korologos, may I ask you, what is your thought about who is going to win this election? Who is winning?
Well, it's too close to call.
Really, yeah.
I think Howard's right. It depends. The other thing that has not been mentioned is the Florida polls close early. So we will know early whether
Okay.
Florida, Maine, North Carolina, South Carolina, we will know by 8:30, 9 o'clock at night
Yes.
on Tuesday night.
Okay, those states are at play, definitely. But Ambassador Gutman, what's your opinion? Who's going to win?
So if I had a gun to my head and I had to pick one, I would say it's Biden, but I don't think it's certain at all. Hopefully, ultimately, the American people in Europe are the big winners, that we have certainty and that we have a direction in the future that helps all.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Well, I have to agree with you guys. It's with you all. It's not really certain. We don't know yet who's going to be the real winner. So with that, Yves Wantens, I will give the floor back to you. Thank you so much, both ambassadors, for this really, really interesting conversation. I liked it a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for moderating, and to the two ambassadors, thank you very much for your useful and very interesting comments and input. From my side, a big word of thanks again to Tom and to Howard. We try to, because we got questions from people who registered for the debate and the webinar. So we've been trying to integrate those questions into the debate. So I hope one is happy about the items that were discussed and the subjects which were handled. Unfortunately, we were not able to handle all the questions, but I hope that one is happy with the debate. In the near future, and I think it will be once we know the outcome of the elections, and hopefully sooner than later, but realistically, we planning another webinar early 2021, which will be focusing on the trade relations, transatlantic, Europe and US. So I would say stay tuned for that one. We'll let you know. And a final word of thanks to the people from Ocean 7 who did technical guidance and the technical assistance today. To all of you, Mark, thank you very much. So last word from me. Thank you for those who need to vote and can vote for the right one. And let's see what's happening on the 3rd of November. And great, a good trip to Nashville. And we're looking forward to hear your comments and to hear your program. Thank you.
Thank you so much.